Las Vegas, September 1962. The Sands Hotel casino floor glows under 1,000 lights. But tonight, something's different. The high rollers. Section buzzes with confusion. Frank Sinatra's usual table hosts two men who shouldn't be there, at least, not as themselves. At the baccarat table sits a man introduced as Casey Tibbs, the legendary rodeo champion. He's quiet, reserved, nursing a single whiskey while placing calculated bets with surgical precision. But his hands are too soft for a cowboy's. His eyes scan the room like a soldier checking for threats. Across the casino floor, at the craps table, a man calling himself Audie Murphy throws dice with reckless abandon. He whoops with each roll, flashes that million-dollar smile, and regales anyone who'll listen with tales of rodeo glory. But something's wrong. America's most decorated war hero wouldn't be this loud, this carefree, this desperate for attention. Because tonight, Audie Murphy and Casey Tibbs have switched identities. And what started as a harmless game between friends is about to become the most dangerous night of their lives. The real Audie Murphy, playing Casey Tibbs, sits at the baccarat table watching mob money change hands. He knows he shouldn't be here, knows this isn't his world, but the war hero who killed 240 Germans has never backed down from a challenge, especially not one that involves outsmarting Las Vegas. The real Casey Tibbs, playing Audie Murphy, rolls the dice and grins as the crowd cheers. He's won the all-around cowboy championship 6 times, but tonight he's winning something else entirely, the respect of Hollywood's elite who think they're gambling with a genuine war hero. What neither man knows is that they've walked into the middle of something much bigger than a friendly wager, something that will test everything they thought they knew about courage, friendship, and the price of fame. Before we continue with the most dangerous game two American legends ever played, let me ask you something. Have you ever pretended to be someone you're not and gotten in over your head? Hit that subscribe button to see how two heroes discovered that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is your own reputation. The idea started 3 hours earlier in Murphy's suite at the Sands. Casey Tibbs, fresh off another rodeo victory, was complaining about the attention that followed him everywhere he went. Can't walk into a bar without some cowboy wanting to prove he's tougher than the 6-time champion, Tibbs said, loosening his tie. Gets old real fast. Murphy poured himself a whiskey, his third of the evening. The nightmares had been worse lately, and alcohol was the only thing that let him sleep. Try being America's most decorated war hero. Every drunk in every bar wants to either buy you a drink or pick a fight. Tibbs studied his friend's face in the mirror. They'd met 2 years ago on a movie set. Murphy making another B-grade Western, Tibbs working as a technical advisor. Despite coming from different worlds, they'd found common ground in their shared burden of unwanted fame. You know what's funny? Tibbs said. People see what they expect to see. They look at you and see a war hero. They look at me and see a cowboy. But they don't really see us. Murphy nodded, understanding perfectly. Both men lived their lives as symbols rather than human beings. The weight of other people's expectations had become a prison they couldn't escape. What if they didn't know who they were looking at? Murphy asked quietly. Tibbs turned around. What do you mean? Murphy's eyes lit up with the same dangerous intelligence that had made him legendary on the battlefields of Europe. What if we gave them someone else to see? What if, for one night, you were Audie Murphy and I was Casey Tibbs? Tibbs laughed. That's crazy. We look nothing alike. Do we? You're about my height. Similar build. Put you in a suit, me in cowboy clothes, dim casino lighting. People see what they want to see, Casey. They see the name, not the man. For 20 minutes, they refined the plan. Murphy would play the quiet, calculating rodeo champion. Tibbs would play the confident, gregarious war hero. They'd switch roles completely, mannerisms, speech patterns, even their approach to gambling. What's the worst that could happen? Tibbs asked. Murphy should have known better than to ask that question. In his experience, when someone asked what's the worst that could happen, you usually found out. The switch was easier than either man expected. Murphy slicked back his hair and donned Tibbs's signature Western shirt and boots. Tibbs put on one of Murphy's tailored suits, and practiced the quiet, measured way the war hero carried himself. They walked into the casino separately, each man wearing the other's identity like a costume. For the first hour, it worked perfectly. Murphy, as Casey Tibbs, found himself enjoying the anonymity. Nobody expected rodeo champions to be strategic thinkers, so when he applied his military tactical training to baccarat, he was dismissed as lucky rather than skilled. He won steadily, quietly, building a stack of chips without drawing attention. Tibbs, as Audie Murphy, discovered the intoxicating power of borrowed heroism. When he introduced himself to a group of Hollywood producers, they hung on his every word. When he told stories of rodeo adventures, they listened as if he was describing battlefield valor. The respect in their eyes was addictive. But Vegas is a small town disguised as a big city, and in small towns, news travels fast. Vincent "Vinny" Torino controlled the high-stakes action at the Sands. Part casino host, part enforcer, all business. He noticed things other people missed, like the fact that Casey Tibbs was playing cards like someone who'd studied strategy under fire, and Audie Murphy was acting like someone who'd never been shot at in his life. Torino made his living reading people. 20 years of separating suckers from their money had taught him that everyone had tells, everyone had weaknesses, and everyone eventually revealed who they really were. Tonight, something was off. And when something was off in Vinny Torino's casino, it usually meant someone was trying to cheat him. "Bobby," Torino said to his lieutenant, "keep an eye on those two. Something doesn't smell right." Murphy sensed the scrutiny before he saw it. Combat had taught him to feel when he was being watched, when danger was approaching from unexpected angles. He looked up from his cards and caught Torino staring at him from across the room. The mob enforcer's expression was neutral, professional. But Murphy had seen that look before, on German officers who suspected something but weren't sure what. It was the look of a predator deciding whether you were prey. Murphy caught Tibbs's eye across the casino and nodded toward the exit. Time to go. But Tibbs was on a roll, both literally and figuratively. He'd just thrown a natural at craps, and the crowd around him was treating him like conquering hero. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tibbs announced to his audience, completely caught up in the performance, "let me tell you about the time I held off 200 Germans with nothing but a .50 caliber machine gun." Murphy's blood turned to ice. Tibbs was about to tell Murphy's most famous war story, the one that won him the Medal of Honor, but Casey Tibbs had never been in the military. If anyone in that crowd knew the real story, knew the real details, the game would be over. And in Vegas, when the game was over, sometimes the players were too. Murphy abandoned his chips and moved quickly toward the craps table. But Torino's men were already closing in from multiple directions. Whatever this was, whatever they suspected, Murphy and Tibbs were about to find out the hard way that Vegas didn't like mysteries. "So there I was," Tibbs continued, his voice carrying across the casino floor, "standing on that burning tank destroyer, and these Germans just kept coming. The details were perfect, too perfect." Tibbs had heard Murphy tell the story dozens of times, and he was reproducing it flawlessly. But that was the problem. Nobody told war stories that perfectly, except the man who lived them. Frank Sinatra, nursing a drink at his usual table, looked up with interest. He'd met the real Audie Murphy several times, had even offered him roles in movies. Something about this version felt wrong, too polished, too performative. "Hey, Audie," Sinatra called out. "Remember that time we discussed doing a picture together? What was the name of that director you recommended?" Tibbs froze. He had no idea how to answer. The crowd around the craps table went quiet, sensing drama. That's when Murphy arrived, pushing through the crowd with the controlled urgency of a man who'd just spotted incoming artillery. "Casey," Murphy said loudly, grabbing Tibbs by the arm. "We need to go. Now." But it was too late. Torino appeared beside them, flanked by two men who looked like they bench-pressed Buicks for exercise. "Gentlemen," Torino said, his voice carrying the soft menace of someone who'd never needed to raise it. "I think we need to have a conversation. Upstairs. Now." The elevator ride to Torino's private office felt longer than Murphy's entire war. Tibbs had gone pale, finally understanding that their harmless game had turned deadly serious. Torino's office overlooked the casino floor through one-way glass. From up here, the gamblers looked like insects scurrying around a honey pot. Which, Murphy realized, was probably exactly how Torino saw them. "Sit," Torino commanded. They sat. "Now then," Torino continued, settling behind his desk like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. "Want to explain to me why Casey Tibbs plays baccarat like a military strategist, and why Audie Murphy tells war stories like he memorized them from a book?" The room went dead quiet. Murphy's mind raced through options. Denial wouldn't work. Torino was too smart. Running wasn't possible. They were 40 stories up with armed guards outside the door. That left truth, which in Vegas was often the most dangerous option of all. Murphy made the decision that had kept him alive through 3 years of combat. When in doubt, attack. "You're right," Murphy said calmly. "I'm Audie Murphy. He's Casey Tibbs. We switched identities for the evening." Torino's eyebrows rose slightly. Whatever he'd expected, it wasn't honest confession. "Interesting. Why?" Murphy leaned back in his chair, projecting the same confidence that had made German soldiers surrender rather than fight him. "Because we got tired of being symbols instead of men. Tired of everyone thinking they knew who we were based on what they'd read in magazines. So you decided to play games in my casino. We decided to find out what it felt like to be someone else for a night." Torino studied both men carefully. "Do you have any idea how much money changed hands downstairs tonight, based on people thinking they were gambling with specific celebrities?" The number he mentioned made Tibbs's face go white. They weren't just in trouble, they were in federal prison-level trouble. "However," Torino continued, "I appreciate honesty. It's rare in this business, so here's what's gonna happen." Murphy tensed, ready for whatever came next. "You're going to walk downstairs, return to your original identities, and have one drink together at the bar. Publicly. Let people see that both Audie Murphy and Casey Tibbs are exactly who they appear to be. Then you're gonna leave my casino and never pull a stunt like this again." Tibbs started to speak, but Torino held up a hand. "In exchange, tonight never happened. The money that changed hands stays changed. Nobody asks any uncomfortable questions. We all pretend this was just an evening of ordinary gambling between two American heroes." Murphy nodded slowly. It was more generous than they had any right to expect. "One more thing," Torino added. "That story you were telling downstairs about the tank destroyer. Next time you tell it, Mr. Tibbs, remember that the real Audie Murphy took shrapnel in his left hip during that fight. He still limps when it rains." The detail hit Tibbs like a slap. He'd told the story of Murphy's greatest moment of heroism without understanding what it had cost the man who lived it. Downstairs, Murphy and Tibbs had their drink at the bar. Word spread quickly that both celebrities were present, that whatever confusion might have existed earlier was just casino gossip. But something had changed between the two friends. The game they'd played had shown them uncomfortable truths about themselves and each other. "I'm sorry," Tibbs said quietly, "about telling your story. I didn't realize." Murphy stared into his whiskey. "I listened to you tell it better than I ever have. Made it sound heroic instead of terrifying. Is that bad?" Murphy was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe that's what people need to hear. The heroic version. Maybe the terrifying version is just for those of us who lived it." They finished their drinks in silence, each man lost in thoughts about identity, performance, and the strange burden of being exactly who the world expected them to be. A week later, Murphy received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph taken in Torino's casino that night. Murphy as Tibbs, Tibbs as Murphy. Both men caught in the act of being someone else entirely. On the back, someone had written, "Vegas remembers everything. Choose your games carefully." Murphy kept the photograph for the rest of his life, a reminder of the night two American legends learned that the most dangerous game isn't cards or dice. It's pretending to be someone you're not when the stakes are real and the house always wins. In Vegas, everyone's got an angle, everyone's working a game, and everyone's pretending to be someone they're not. But for one night in 1962, two men discovered that the biggest risk wasn't losing money. It was losing themselves in someone else's story. Hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments. Have you ever pretended to be someone else and gotten caught? And unfortunately, they don't make men like Audie Murphy and Casey Tibbs anymore.